What's up, lovers of whiskey and watchers of YouTube? I'm the Malt activist, and today in this video I want to talk to you about 5 hidden gems or whiskeys that sort of fly under the radar that I think you should know about instead of buying big name brands. You know what I mean? I think you know what I mean. Before we begin, I just want to give a big shout out to my first time viewers. Thank you for clicking through to this channel, which means you love whiskey. And if you do love whiskey, then watch this video. And I think you like it. And if you like it, then I would really like it if you subscribe. That will mean a lot. Maybe share, maybe drop in a comment. Do anything but stick around. And to my returning viewers, like I always say, thank you for keeping your standards so low. You guys are the wind beneath my wings. Now for this video, I want to do something that I've been doing for the last few weeks, which is, hey, this is shit, this is nice, this is shit, this is nice, this is shit, this is nice, right? Which is not really what I've been doing. I've been trying to find stuff that I think you will like, and it's all very opinionated, right? I got some good feedback for those videos. I got some kind of not bad feedback. Some people actually found it useful. Some people thought I was an elitist snob, and I think both of you are kind of right in your own way. But basically what we're trying to do here, I mean, don't doubt our intentions on this channel, which are to, you know, kind of give you advice which, you know, 25-30 years of whiskey drinking has kind of come to me, and I think you might benefit from it. That's the only reason. Right? Now for this video, I was thinking, you know, what happens normally, and this is to the, I don't want to use the word novice, but to, let's say, the slightly uninitiated whiskey drinker who's just started his journey on this magical spiritual road. What happens is they essentially come across these big name brands. And when I say big name brands, I'm talking about powerhouse whiskey brands that have the power of money and marketing and PR and advertising behind them and distribution, and you find them wherever you go. You find them at the airports and the duty frees, in little grocery stores, in the outskirts of, you know, little shitty towns or whatever it is. You find them because these guys are giants, and so you think that your choices are limited to those brands and those whiskeys. But fear not, because the Malt activist is here. And essentially what I'm trying to tell you now is that there are these not very well known, kind of flying under the radar. I don't even want to use the word hidden gems, because they're not really hidden gems. They're definitely gems, mind you. But these whiskeys, they exist, and I think they might serve as very good alternatives to these big name branded whiskeys, right? Now, please, I am not saying that any of the whiskeys, the big brand whiskeys that I'm talking about, are shit. All I'm saying is that I think that you can find a slightly different, normally better, sometimes cheaper drinking experience when compared to the big brand, big name whiskeys that I'm talking about, right? Now, I'm not saying any of those whiskeys are bad. I just think that instead of buying those whiskeys 5 times, I think you should go and buy other stuff which maybe some type of similar flavor profiles, something a little more zesty, something a little more fresh, something a little more nuanced, something a little more interesting than the standard wear that these big name brands put out. So with that caveat said, trying to make my position as neutral as possible, right? I think we should get on with the video, and let's start with whiskey number 1 and its hidden gem alternative. The first whiskey I want to talk to you about is from the powerhouse Glenlivet, and I'm talking about the Glenlivet 12. Now, Glenlivet 12 is an entry-level whiskey from the Glenlivet distillery, and genuinely, I think it is a very decent dram. If you're a beginner whiskey drinker, then this is a perfect entry-level whiskey for you. It's very nice. It's uncomplicated. It's very palatable. But once you've bought your first bottle and drunk it, and you're going out there and you want to kick it up a notch, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna buy the Glenlivet 12 again? Or you're going to look at this whiskey? I'm talking about the Anok 12. Yeah, have you heard of the Anok 12? Because if you haven't, this is what I'm going to do first. I'm going to put both whiskeys up on the screen and do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison on what you can expect. Okay, so now the Glenlivet 12 on the left is 40%. The Anok 12 is also 40%. The Glenlivet 12 is matured in bourbon and sherry casks, as is the Anok 12, also bourbon and sherry cask. The only difference is that on average, the Glenlivet is for about 43 pounds, whereas the Anok you can get for 38 pounds. So definitely cheaper by about roughly, I want to say 10-12% compared to the Glenlivet 12. Otherwise, more or less very similar in terms of the maturation and the ABV. But why do we like the Anok 12? Why do we like it more than the Glenlivet 12? Well, again, this is just my personal opinion. This is just my drinking experience. This is my own personal opinion why I would pick the Anok 12 over the Glenlivet 12. And that's because I think the Anok 12 is a little more brighter, slightly more expressive. I like the citrus and the malt notes that come out a little with a little more oomph, with a little more panache, if you like. I feel it has a bit of greater depth, a little more complexity when compared to the Glenlivet 12. It feels to me more handcrafted and less commercial, and I know that's not a tangible thing, but it is what it is. It's what I feel on the inside, and frankly I think it's one of those hidden gems that, you know, it flies under the radar. It has a nice personality, and you also get it at a slightly lower price. So, you know, considering those points, I think the Anok 12 I think just scores a little better, fares a little better than the Glenlivet 12. Both very decent whiskeys, mind you, but I think the Anok 12 by a little bit of a margin in terms of all those areas, a little more nuanced, nice oomphy flavors, a little bit cheaper, and again, something so intangible to say, it feels craft and not commercial. I don't know how to explain it, right? You'll know when you go out and buy your first Anok 12 and you drink it, you'll say, that old crusty bastard was right. Along the same lines of the Glenlivet 12 in terms of powerhouse whiskey brands, I want to talk to you about the Glenfiddich 15 Solera. Now, let me tell you something. I fell in love with whiskey because of the Glenfiddich 15. One of the great whiskeys out there. Again, so easily available, good, high, above average production value for something that is such a mass scale product. I think the Glenfiddich 15 is an absolutely wonderful whiskey. Absolutely wonderful whiskey. However, when I'm out there and I don't really feel like buying or drinking the Glenfiddich 15, there's another whiskey that I go to, which has a similar flavor profile, and I think delivers, again, a little bit more on the personality, on the nuance, on the flavor profile. I'm talking about the Ben Romach 10 years old. Let's put him up on the screen. Now, in terms of side-by-side comparison, the Glenfiddich 15 is 40% ABV, whereas Ben Romach 10 is 43% ABV. Both are matured in sort of ex-bourbon and sherry casks, and the Glenfiddich 15 comes in at about 60 pounds, whereas the Ben Romach 10 considerably cheaper at 37 pounds. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, malt activist, you idiot, this is a 15-year-old whiskey and you're comparing it to the 10-year-old. I get it. Please don't get me wrong. I get it. However, I'm comparing flavor profiles over here. I didn't want to sort of talk about age, or I didn't want to talk about price savings. I just wanted to talk about the drinking experience, right? So yes, I know we're comparing a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old, and sure, I guess in some parts of the world you could get shot for that, but not on this channel. On this channel, we accept these, stupid comparisons. You know what I mean? But yes, the Benromach 10 is actually a very, very good whiskey when you compare it to the Glenfiddich 15 Solera. And why do we like the Benromach more? Well, it's largely because it has a higher ABV and a little bit of a better mouthfeel, in my opinion. I like the earthy Highland style, and it has just a teeny bit of smoke in there, which I think actually adds this really nice layer of complexity to it, which I really like. Again, you know, the craft for me comes out. It's a little more traditional. I like the small scale production approach. And overall, I think it's a little more bold, a little more complex, and of course, it comes in at about half the price. So, while this may not be an apples to apple or a barley to barley or an orange to orange comparison, I'm just talking about sort of whiskey styles, right? So they're both bourbon, but with a very heavy sherry influence. Yeah, but the Benromach 10 for me, much better drinking experience if you ask me. And I think Benromach as a distillery doing a lot of interesting things to set themselves apart, and you know, overall I think doing a great job. There's also a Benromach cask strength, which, you know, they'll put the vintage on, which comes in at about 9 years or 10 years old, which is at about 58 to 59%, depending on which batch you get. So that is also an option. So I'll leave that up to you. But yeah, for me, the Benromach 10 fares slightly better than the Glenfiddich 15-year-old. Interesting, right? That a 10-year-old fares that much better than a 15-year-old. Interesting. Benromach, definitely a distillery to watch out for. The third big name is probably the biggest name of all in Scotch whiskey industry. I'm of course talking about the Macallan 12 Sherry Oak. Now, again, for those of you who watch the channel for a while now, know that I'm not a big fan of the Macallan marketing machine. I feel that they hide behind the glitz and try and disguise what, in my opinion, is basically an inferior product. Having said that, again, one of the reasons I fell in love with whiskey drinking was because of the Macallan, and especially the Macallan 12. The old Macallan 12s were just phenomenal whiskeys, and I don't know what happened. You know, I don't know what happened. I don't really enjoy drinking the Macallan 12 Sherry Oak that much. I'm going to be very honest with you. However, in place of that, I would, at any time of the day, if you were to give me these two options, would always go for the Glenallachie 12-year-old. Yeah, let's put him up on the screen and let's see what the fuss is all about. So the Macallan 12 on the left, 40%, whereas the Glenallachie 12, 46%. The Macallan is 100% sherry seasoned European oak maturation, whereas the Glenallachie 12 is a mix of PX and Oloroso. Of course, this is where the big difference is in the price. The Macallan 12 coming in at a staggering £78, whereas the Glenallachie 12 at a very respectable £48. So it's almost, you know, 40% less in terms of the pricing. And why do we like the Glenallachie 12? Well, definitely higher ABV. It's bottled, we know for sure it's non-chill filtered. I suspect the Macallans are chill filtered, hence that mouthfeel comparison really stands apart for me. I feel that the Glenallachie 12 has a richer sherry character with a better balance. I like the fact that they're more transparent about their wood policy and flavor integrity. That means a lot to me. And you know, and this is just a feeling. I think it's more exciting. I think it's more of a dynamic dram, and for significantly less money, right? And again, I'm a huge fan of Billy Walker, his just legendary whiskey maker in today's day and age, and I'm in love with the Glenallachie. There are some independent Glenallachies out there that you should try as well. So if you've never tried a Glenallachie and all you've seen on the shelves is a Macallan 12, I would highly recommend finding this out, scoping the Glenallachie 12, and you'll be very pleasantly surprised at how good this whiskey is. So yeah, for me, definitely the Glenallachie 12 is head and shoulders above the Macallan 12. Our fourth whiskey on this list is the Highland Park 12 from the Edrington portfolio. Again, another powerhouse. And again, please don't get me wrong, Highland Park is just one of those gorgeous whiskeys. Back in the day, I fell in love with whiskey drinking because of that. I think I fell in love with whiskey drinking because of all these whiskeys. The Highland Park 18, I remember, changed the way I viewed a whiskey. It was just so wonderfully balanced. That little puff of smoke, it was just absolutely stunning. But I feel that the Highland Park 12 not doing so well in recent days. It's to me, it's kind of a little boring, a little sort of one-dimensional, and in place of that, I would rather have the old Pulteney 12, of which I am a huge fan, right? So let's put them up on the screen and let's do a side-by-side comparison. Okay, we know that the Highland Park 12 is at 40%, as is the old Pulteney 12, so no difference there. The Highland Park 12 is ex-sherry, ex-bourbon, whereas the old Pulteney 12, majority, predominantly, let's say, ex-bourbon cask. And their pricing is more or less the same. The Highland Park coming in at an average of £41, whereas the old Pulteney at a very decent £38. So maybe like a 7-8% saving there. Why do we prefer the old Pulteney 12? Well, I think I really prefer its brighter coastal character, you know, with the citrus and the brine. I really like that. It feels fresher. I think it's more lively on the palate. I think it's less oak dominated and has a little more crisp maltiness to it when I compare it to the Highland Park 12. And generally, I feel this is an often overlooked whiskey, you know, and I think it delivers better value and balance when you compare it to the Highland Park 12. So, and you know, I've sung praises of the old Pulteney 12 in my other videos, you know, gems to find under £50, and this is constantly coming in on those lists all the time because A, it's a very good drinking experience, it's very, very affordable, and I think it's, again, one of those whiskeys that flies under the radar. Which I think if you haven't heard of, or if you haven't tried, and you know you were reaching for a Highland Park 12, I would really recommend sort of moving your gaze around and finding an old Pulteney 12 sitting there and trying it and you know giving it a try. Try your hand at the old Pulteney 12. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. Last but not the least, this is probably my most controversial entry on this list, is the Talisker 10-year-old. Now, the Talisker 10-year-old is a lovely whiskey, no doubt, from the Isle of Skye, from the Talisker distillery, of course, and it's a very, very big whiskey. It's a great whiskey in my opinion, and I think Diageo has done a great job with the Talisker 10, but off late, I'm finding that those flavors don't really cut it for me, and in its place, I was very, very pleasantly surprised to find myself gravitating towards the Belgian 10 years old. Let's put them up. So the Talisker 10 is bottled at 45.8% ABV, whereas the Belgian 10 is bottled at 46, so more or less the same. In terms of maturation, the Talisker 10 is refill bourbon and sherry cask, so is the Belgian 10. And in terms of pricing, the Talisker 10 is actually cheaper at £48, with the Belgian 10 coming at slightly higher, £52. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, this is not just about saving money, but it's about finding you a different drinking experience compared to those big brand names out there. But why do we prefer the Belgian 10? Well, I think it's a little more heavier, earthier peat with a little more body, in my opinion. I like the Highland funk. It, you know, meets sherry depth. It has, and which gives it a unique complexity. It's definitely non-chill filtered, and again, I love the craft presentation around it. And again, you know, it feels a little more artisanal. It feels a little more adventurous. And again, I don't know how to put my finger on it, but those things are part of my purchasing decision, you know, finding something artisanal, finding something craft. And what you don't know is Belgian is from the Edredor distillery. That's right, I'm a huge fan of Edredor. Edredor is probably one of the smallest, if not the smallest, distillery in the Highlands, and they do Edredor, which is a non-peated version, and they do just absolutely stunning whiskeys. And then they do a heavily peated version, which is the Belgian. right? I remember trying it a couple of months ago, and I was like, whoa, that is phenomenal. And you know, you can tell that it's not super coastal peat. It's very inland, mainland peat. It has a different earthy quality to it that you don't find in coastal whiskeys, especially peated inland or mainland whiskeys that are peated. You will find this sort of earthiness that comes from the peat rare, and it is a sweet earthiness. It's a very heathery earthiness, which I really like. So yeah, again, you know, you probably never heard the Belgian. I had heard of it, but hadn't had the opportunity to drink it until a few months ago, and I instantly became a fan, especially since, you know, I knew it was from the Edredor distillery. So yeah, there you have it, man. There you have it. What do you think? I think if you find yourself a Belgian, pick it out, try it. I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised. All right, so there you have it, right? 5 very good whiskeys and their 5 hidden gem alternatives. I don't know how else to say it, right? So other than the MACALLAN 12 Sherry Oak, which I'm not a big fan of, I'm genuinely a fan of the other whiskeys that I spoke about, right? But the reason I want you to try these other hidden gems or under the radar whiskeys is broaden your palate, broaden your horizons. Go find and drink something that you've never drunk before. Go and ask the sales guy to really earn his money and say, find me a better alternative to the Glenlivet 12 or the Glenfiddich 15 or the Talisker 10. Find me something with a similar flavor profile, but get me a little more ABV, get me a little more nuance, get me a little more, I don't know, give me a little more character, and then see them struggle. You know what I mean? Because, you know, commercialization is the name of the game. That's why these people are in business. And that's why, you know, smaller distilleries go out of business, because we just don't know that they're there or that they exist, and they ride the wave, you know, of demand and where the whiskey economy is taking them. And we need people like you, we need people like me to identify and find these whiskeys, these distilleries that are out there doing the work, putting in the hours, putting in the sweat, putting in that passion, and bringing those whiskeys out for you to try. And I'm telling you, if you go out and, you know, I would like nothing better than for you to go and get these 5 big brand whiskeys, these 5 under the radar hidden gems, sit side by side and do your own comparison and see whether I made sense or not, or whether I was just, I don't know, a crusty old bastard that's full of shit. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I hope you like this video. I hope it makes you go out and make interesting whiskey buying choices. That's why we're here, man. That's why we're here. Okay, yes, before I sign off, I just want to let you know I have a really cool video coming up in a couple of days, and that is I am going to be reviewing, check this out. This is a Russian single malt. That's right, a Russian single malt whiskey from the Klemlia distillery, and I don't have just one, I have 4 of these. Woo! 4 of these. You guys are gonna love it. I'm gonna put up the pictures on the screen for you to see it. Have a quick look. Our next video is going to be about these 4 Russian single malt whiskeys, which my friend picked up from St. Petersburg and smuggled them in here somehow. I don't know how he did it. I've had them. They're very interesting. I think they're worth a review. I hope you guys tune in next time and we see what the Russian fuss is all about. All right, enough ranting and raving from me. I'm the Malt Activist. Until next time. Peace.